If you are looking for a line of car audio speakers that are designed for use in factory vehicle locations while providing an audiophile grade experience, while also having the ability to play the most demanding dynamic music with precision, you will want to take a look at this new line of drivers from Gladen Audio. This is the Zeta series. In this video, we are going to unbox the 4 different models in this lineup and discuss their specs and design. First off, a big thanks to Gladen Audio America for sponsoring this video so that we can take a closer look. In case you're not familiar with the Gladen Audio speaker lineup, the extreme high-end drivers are called the Aerospace series. The Zeta series that we're discussing in this video feature many of the same technologies as the top-of-the-line Aerospace, but are more geared towards seamless integration into today's vehicles. Let's kick things off with an unboxing, taking a look at the woofers. For the mid-bass drivers in the Zeta lineup, there are 2 different options. First off, these are the 6.5-inch drivers, which are the ZW165s, and then these are the 8-inch mid-bass drivers. These are the ZW200s. So opening the ZW200s here, you can see that we get ourselves a manual along with the 2 different drivers. Throughout this lineup, you're going to notice that the focus is the drivers themselves. There's no passive crossovers included. You're going to want to run these active anyhow. Let's talk more about the design of this driver. Remember that the goal throughout this lineup is sound quality in OEM speaker locations. For vehicles that will allow us to implement an 8-inch mid-bass driver, these are going to give us the benefit of that huge, massive cone area while having a mounting depth just over 3 1/8 inches or 80 millimeters for you metric folks. The cones on these are a Nomex paper compound, which is very lightweight and very rigid. The benefit here is that the cone will not flex or lose shape, causing distortion when playing more demanding music like rap, metal, EDM. Fidelity is going to be maintained. Spec-wise, these are rated at 150 watts RMS, and they have a 3 ohm nominal impedance, which means we're able to extract a bit more power from our amplifier. Now, with this being an 8-inch mid-bass driver, we of course wanted to be able to play low, and these have a resonant frequency of 44.8 hertz. The recommended crossover range on these is from 70 hertz up to 2.1 kilohertz. Now, you may have noticed that the magnet on the back side is perhaps a little bit smaller than what you're used to seeing on a driver of this size, but what you need to know is this is a neodymium magnet. Going with a neodymium magnet here is advantageous as it allows us to save more room while still getting the magnet force that is needed in comparison to a larger ferrite magnet. So again, this goes back to the ease of installation, and you'll also notice that we have a cast metal basket here. And for the 8-inch mid-bass driver here, there are 8 different holes that allow us to mount this driver in position. Moving on to the 6.5-inch mid-bass, the ZW-165. Again, we have a link to the product manual there, and then we've got the 2 drivers. These are very similar to the 8-inch mid-bass, with the obvious difference of being the 6.5-inch size, but what I love is these are still rated at 150 watts RMS, and they still have that 3 ohm nominal impedance. Here's a side-by-side comparison with the 8-inch mid-bass versus the 6.5, and as you would expect, this does have a slightly higher resonant frequency. In this case, we are at 53 hertz, but we can also see that we do have a slightly different mounting depth. In this case, about 2.8 inches or 71 millimeters. Now, the recommended crossover range on these is from 80 hertz up to 2.6 kilohertz, so while they may not play quite as low as the 8-inch mid-bass, they do have a little bit higher upper end extension. But again, the design goal here is low distortion at high output levels with demanding music applications, and also being able to easily install these into factory locations. On the backside, these again have that cast metal basket and a very similar motor design to the 8-inch mid-bass, with that neodymium magnet. So far, the Zeta lineup has some really cool drivers, but what I am most excited about personally is what is in this package right here. These are the ZM70s. These are a wideband driver. We'll discuss what it means to be a wideband driver in just a second here, but first let's do our unboxing. And I do want to point out that this is the without accessories version here. I'll talk about that in just a second, but we open this up. Again, get that QR code to go to the manuals. In this case, these have a little protective piece on top of the cones there. And here is the ZM70. Something you may notice right away about the ZM70s is they don't have the traditional mounting holes around the outside. Instead, they have this twist lock pattern. Now, since I got the non-accessory version, this means that I don't have the mounting rings that you could get, but it is worth noting that there are some mounting rings available that you could order with these. Those do incorporate a traditional bolt pattern that you could then twist lock this into, but the other option is getting some 3D printed style rings from your Gladen Audio America dealer in order to mount these. The advantage here of using 3D printing is we don't necessarily have to 3D print a circle shape like this adapter here. Instead, the outside shape could match one of the OEM mid-range locations that we are commonly seeing in vehicles. And then the inside could be designed with this tab system that locks into the outer ring of the driver. Now these are a 2 3/4 inch driver, and they have a mounting depth of about 1.38 inches or around 34 millimeters. So these have a small compact size, allowing them to be easily used in OEM locations. These have a 4 ohm nominal impedance and are rated at 80 watts RMS. But the main benefit here with these being a wideband, that means these can play up to about 17 kilohertz with a very flat on-axis response. Not only that, these have a resonant frequency of 122 hertz, which means they can play low enough that this becomes an excellent pair. You could pair these with the 6.5 inch mid-bass driver for a two-way setup, or you could even pair them with the 8 inch mid-bass driver for a two-way setup. It is quite common that we're seeing this in vehicles now where there is a small mid-range location up on the dash. And what that means is a lot of times when we're installing an aftermarket component set of speakers, we'd be mounting the larger mid-bass driver in the door, and then we would be mounting a tweeter up in the dash. Now, a traditional tweeter in this location wouldn't be able to play as low to hand off to our mid-bass driver, which means we need our mid-bass driver to play higher, which means we start to get into the beaming frequencies of our mid-bass driver. I cover this more in this video up in the corner of the screen that you can check out so you better understand what I'm talking about here. But the moral of the story is having an aftermarket solution that's a little bit larger that we can install into these dash locations that will play lower but also play up nice and high is a great solution with this wideband technology. Having a two-way application also simplifies the design of the system. You need less amplifier channels than if you were to go with a three-way design, and it can make tuning a bit easier. So in a wideband application, the recommendation on these is a crossover from 300 hertz on up, but if you did want to, you could also use these as a mid-range driver because there is an additional tweeter that is in the Zeta lineup. We're going to talk about that in a second, but the recommended frequency range on these in a three-way application would be from 300 hertz up to 6 kilohertz. And these also have a vented voice coil and a low loss suspension designed for detailed and dynamic reproduction. The goal here is to remain very precise even at low volumes or when there are very quick changes in the sound, which allows for more dynamic and detailed sound performance, all while maintaining sound quality in factory speaker locations. Now, like I said, if you did want to make your Zeta lineup a full three-way component set, you could do so by adding this tweeter right here. This is the ZT30. You could also use this in a two-way configuration with the woofers, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. But opening this up, in this case, this is the version that gives us some accessories here. We can pop this out of the mounting hardware here. And in this case, there's this included option of a tweeter pod. On the back side, you can see this has some mounting holes that we can mount this on a panel along with passing through the wiring. And this allows the tweeter to press into place. And along with the tweeters and the mounting pods, we also get some mounting hardware, and these are some patterns. It's hard to see here, but they have a cutout that matches the back side of this tweeter mounting pod so that you could correctly drill the mounting hole locations as needed. And then also included in this set is an option for the grills. You can see these have the Gladen Audio logo on them there, and these are silver in color and made of metal. You could go with that option, or you could keep this black grill mesh. So I've taken off that grill mesh so we can get a good look at this ZT30 tweeter, and the ZT30 is a 30mm tweeter, so for us that use inches, that's a little bit larger than the traditional 1-inch tweeter. It's about 1.18 inches. And the advantage of it being a little bit larger is it can play a little bit lower, which means we could use this in a two-way configuration paired up with the 6.5, or a two-way configuration paired up with the 8-inch mid-bass driver. The ZT30 has a resonant frequency of 600 Hertz, and the recommended frequency range on these is from 2000 Hertz and on up. Now, if you did go with a three-way configuration, you could of course rely on these to play even higher and again incorporate that ZM70 for the mid-range frequencies. But again, the fact that the ZT30 can play so low if needed tells me that Gladen Audio did their research on these to make these a good cohesive system depending on what is needed for your application. The mounting depth on these when they're in their housing is just over 1 inch. It's about 26 millimeters. And these have a 4 ohm nominal impedance and are rated at 60 watts RMS. In regards to the sound profile here, these are a silk dome design, so we're going to get that smooth silk dome sound that doesn't break up at high volume. So overall, if you're looking for a set of speakers that provide audiophile grade performance in OEM locations while still allowing for tons of output for more demanding listening, you're definitely going to want to check out the Zeta series. To learn more and find a Gladen Audio America dealer near you, be sure to check out the links down in the video description. Again, a big thanks to Gladen Audio America for sponsoring this video, and thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching.